Okay, it is Mars Day, February the 14th. It is sometimes being celebrated as Valentine's Day. It is Lupercalia. Also in ancient Rome traditions, it was the celebration of fertility and prosperity and health. So there's a lot of stuff that we may see this week around Valentine's Day things, around love. So just holding space this week for any and all that comes with that, the good, the bad, the ugly of those experiences, all of it is welcome. And we're going to talk about how the astrology of this week also plays into that same kind of Valentine's Day energy. So we're going to get into all of the astrology. We're going to do some check-ins throughout. So anyone that is here live, feel free to hop off mic in those times or check into the chat ever. And feel free to share as much or as little as feels relevant for everybody. Okay, so first, I'm just going to kind of breathe into the space, set the container. Feel free to do whatever feels good for you or nothing at all. I'm just considering this Mars Day, right? So I am tapping into my Mars and Taurus during these times, and I'm feeling very Mars and Taurus-y today. I'm staying at my dad's house. He is a Taurus sun. And, it feels very cozy, right? Like this space that I'm in is very comfortable, but it's an oversized, big, comfy chair. That's very my Mars, right? Like my Mars is in Taurus. And so I invite you, if you would like, to just consider what your Mars and your natal chart would like to feel comfortable, to be seen, to be acknowledged today on Mars's day. Or not. Just breathing into the space. So I'm gonna start today with, just kind of going a little bit deeper into Mars. So when we think about the glyph of Mars, it's the circle and then the arrow that shoots out from it. And what that symbol is the circle of spirit. And so it's the circle of consciousness, it's spirit embodied. And then the arrow indicates the thrusting out of that energy into the world, right? The Mars symbol is also seen as the shield, the circle being the shield, and then the arrow, the sword that's coming out of it, right? So when we think about Mars, we think about the god of war, we think about passion, we think about external experiences, things that we do, right? It's the circle of spirit and the arrow of action. And so, that can look a lot of different ways. In Mars's home sign of Aries, it's going to look very different than if Mars is in Taurus, right? For me, my Mars is much slower. It's much, more hesitant, right? Like Mars in Aries, it has the passion, it has the spark, and it's going to go. But Mars in Taurus is a little more like, is this worth me getting up out of this chair and doing that? So it's a different experience. And so again, my invitation is to consider what Mars is doing in your chart a little bit deeper while we sit into these spaces and come together around Mars's day. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So that being said, just going to start today with a little bit of a check-in on what's going on. This can be anyone, anywhere that wants to chime in with their experience or not. Any questions that you're just dying to ask, you can't pay attention to anything else until you ask these questions, feel free to ask them now in the chat or come off mic, put them in the captions, the comments, I mean. Then we're going to do an overview of this week. another little check-in, and then we'll go into the chart pool and the daily breakdown for the week. So that's the overview. So I mentioned that I'm here. This is check-in time, so feel free to check into the chat, or in a moment when I stop gabbing, feel free to come off mic and do your own, whatever feels safe and comfortable for you. If you're watching later, put it in the comments. So Curtis and I, as some of you know, are in the midst of transitioning where we've been staying. We've been in West Virginia unintentionally when our RV blew up, when Mars entered Gemini in August, and Sun Saturn, it was the Sun Saturn opposition, the day that our RV broke down. And we're planning to leave on Thursday, not intentional, but Thursday is also the day that Sun and Saturn meet up in a conjunction, which finishes that cycle that we've been in and starts a new one. And I actually just realized the astrology of that in my own experience this morning, when I was thinking, because we were planning on leaving like in September, and then, Mars was retrograde, so I kind of had an idea we'd still be here. And so now here we are, months and months and months later, finally getting steps closer to finally taking off and re-entering the life that kind of got put on pause many months ago. So sometimes it's just interesting to track the transits that way, to see like what's playing out more specifically. But this week, yeah, that's what I have going on. We're back at my dad's house, staying here. The RV had to get checked for a couple things just before we take off, and then we're planning to head out of here at the end of this week. So I'll be using one of the transits to help us kind of get some things done, and we'll talk about that as we move through. But let me know if there's anything that wants to be shared here live, any questions that you have before we get into the overall kind of energy of the week ahead. I'm going to mute and take a sip and make space for anybody that wants to share. No pressure either way. Okay. All right. So this weekend was a little bit heavy astrologically. So we're coming off of Mercury moving into Aquarius, and before that happened on Saturday. And then it's also been separating from a conjunction with Pluto. Pluto, as we know, is the underworld. It's our shadows. It's the obsessive thoughts. It's all of this really deep and heavy and intense kind of energy. And so Mercury and Pluto had a conjunction, and then Mercury moved out into Aquarius, which allows us to get some loft in the mental stuff and be innovative and, intellectual with some things, and even separate ourselves a little bit from the heaviness that Pluto brings in, right? Aquarius allows us to detach a bit from the emotional side of things. So with Mercury in Aquarius, as it continues to move through Aquarius and separate from Pluto, it also allows us to come out of some of the depth of that darkness, which, is going to be opposite to what the sun is doing as it dips into Pisces. So it's always a balancing act. But when we're looking at Mercury specifically, it's out of Aquarius, which can allow us to get some kind of, it's almost like getting our head above water, to be able to see and plan and see what needs to be done. But Pluto is at the 29th degree of Capricorn now. It's an anaretic degree. It's what's referred to as a crisis degree. And Pluto is a collective planet. So we may see some volatile, no, not we may see, we are seeing more volatile things coming out. I don't foresee that necessarily stopping anytime soon. And so the invitation here is to remember Pluto is a collective planet. So everybody's moving through things. So be as honest and truthful as you can with yourself and your loved ones. And with Pluto, it's always about releasing, not holding on too tightly to things, right? And it's hard and it's difficult, but that's the invitation with Pluto, is to let go what is ready to be let go of, right? It's the death cycle. We have to release in order to let new things in. So when Pluto is collectively at the 29th degree, um, we can see some things happening. So just checking in with your own mental health space, reaching out to your resource support partners, whatever that looks like, to take care of your mental health in the best way that you can as Pluto makes this transit. Over the next couple months, it's going to stay at 29 degrees. And then in March, it's going to move into Aquarius and be at 0 degrees Aquarius. And then it's going to station retrograde at 0 degrees and move back into Capricorn to 29 degrees of Capricorn again. So the Pluto energy is very present, really for the rest of the year. And so noticing what's coming up from the shadows, what's coming up that we've kind of not wanted to look at, and how can we deal with it, right? That's what Pluto wants us to do. It brings things up for us to look at so that we can deal with them. And so Pluto is going to be a significant player as we move through. Again, it's a collective planet. It's a generational planet. It's an outer planet. And so not everybody's going to be feeling all of this heaviness. But if you have strong Pluto energy, or you have planets around 29 degrees of Capricorn, or aspecting that, then you may be feeling it and it may be heavy. And so I just want to offer grace to yourself, and you deserve support and resource. So if you don't have that, please reach out to me and we can make a plan to move forward, because Pluto energy is very difficult. And, it's important to have resource around stuff that makes us feel shitty. So there's that. Okay. But Mercury moving away from it is helpful. It gives us a little bit of a detachment, so that we can look at it and make a plan and deal with it, right? Because that's what Pluto wants us to do, deal with it. Mars is also separating from a sextile to Chiron. So over the weekend, I had a really bad physical body attack release process. And after I moved through it, it was horrible. I felt terrible. But after I moved through it, it was very Plutonian and Chiron to me. It was very much like a process that my body went through and I came out of it. So Mars is separating from that Chiron sextile. So if you've had body pain, body issues, things coming up around the body, Mars is the body, and Chiron is our wounds. So that can be wounding around your connection to your body or your physical health, any of that stuff. If that was present this weekend, that will start to well, it has started to kind of dissipate, but it will be triggered again by the moon later this week. So if there was body stuff that came up over the weekend, recognize and put up the bumpers for it, because the moon is going to agitate it again, actually later today on Tuesday the 14th. So for me, that means making sure that I drink my water, because I didn't do enough of that, making sure that I'm not taking on other people's energy because I was doing too much of that this weekend, and my self-work, my self-care, right, to take care of my body. So that's what I need, but that might not be what you need. So you may not need anything. This transit might not have affected you at all. But if it did, just a little bit of a heads up that you might want to resource yourself around that later today as well. Okay, so we have that stuff separating. We have the moon that has just moved through Scorpio over the weekend, another deepening and intensity of that energy, that Pluto energy, as the moon moved through Scorpio over the weekend. It's now out into Sagittarius, thank God. It was a heavy weekend for me. It hit a lot of like the aspects, the degrees hit a lot of stuff in my chart. So I took a breath of relief when the moon moved out of Scorpio and into Sag, where it's sitting today, and it's getting amplified by a trine to Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries is brave and courageous and fun and exciting. And so the moon in Sag wants to be free. It wants to be light. It wants to joke around. It wants to have a good time. It wants to expand and grow and all those Jupiterian Sagittarius things. And it's hitting this super exciting trine to Jupiter in Aries this morning. So if there's the ability to laugh, this morning, it's a great time. Put on some comedy podcast, put on some show, put on something that makes you feel good, feel excited. If that feels available, then the moon and Sag hitting that trine to Jupiter could be helpful. But then again, remembering later today that the moon moving through Sag is also going to hit a square to Chiron in Aries, and it's also going to hit a sextile to Mars. So no, it's not. It's going to hit a opposition to Mars. So that's a difficult thing, bringing back that Mars Chiron conversation that we talked about earlier. Sorry, my words got jumbled, so I hope that that made sense. Anyway, lighter morning maybe, and then this afternoon it might get a little bit more difficult. But again, this is moon stuff, so it's going to be quick, and it's only going to matter if it's hitting specific things in your chart. But the main part about this week that I want to speak to, okay, hold on the chat. My body was super bad this weekend too, specifically with pain, as it has eased, my stomach nodded. Yes. Yeah, I had a lot of stomach stuff as well, coming up around that too. So yeah, so today, if at all possible, while that's going to get re-agitated by the moon, whatever rest is available or looks like for your body, or whatever you feel like it needed over the weekend. And maybe you don't know. And if you don't know, that's okay. And if that's the case, then we just do our best to resource ourselves and give us the space and the grace to move through it in whatever way possible. But yeah, it can be hard, especially, Mars Chiron is difficult, and our body takes the hit for it a lot of times. This week is a little bit frustrating for mental health, because we have transits to Neptune and also to Pluto and also to Saturn. And so with all of that, right, Neptune rules anxiety and Saturn rules depression. And so we can find ourselves in this limbo between anxiety and depression. So if you find yourself apt to get anxious or apt to get depressed or both, again, bumpers and resource around that this week could be helpful. So let me know if I can help with any of that, but we'll get into the specifics of that. But with any heavy transits to Neptune, we're going to feel that anxiety. Any heavy transits to Saturn, we're going to feel that depression. Saturn literally depresses the energy. That's what Saturn does. And so, we can feel ourselves moving between super anxious and super depressed. And we can also find ourselves between the reality Saturn and the fantasy Neptune. So there's that like up and down that we're going to be feeling as we move through the next couple days. So we're going to get into the everyday, what we're doing with the chart and all of that. But before we get into that, is there any questions, anything that's come up for anybody here live? Pop it in the chat, come off the mic, whatever feels safe and organic for you is available. I'm going to take a sip, and then I'm also going to note we have a patron here, Willow, who is the face, the being, the soul behind Damned Muddle on Instagram and online. And one of the things that we're going to be dealing with today, right, is Valentine's Day. And when we talk about Valentine's Day, there's a lot that comes up about love. There's a lot that comes up about what it should be, what it could be, what it isn't, like all of these things come up about love and relationship. And so as we have these energies, I think it's important to lean into what is love for you and where does that image come from? Is it attainable? Or is it an ideal that we've learned from society that should happen? Are we waiting for the perfect love? Are we looking for the perfect love? Does that exist? And what is that experience for me? With that as the ideal, how can I become more realistic? How can I restructure my expectations around love and around relation based on what is true for me, what my needs are? Right? And recognizing where the toxic programming has been picked up through society, honoring it, right? Noticing it, and just being aware of it, because the up and down energy this week can really take us on a ride for real. Like we have this really high peak of romanticism and idealizing and fantasy. And then we have this big dip with Saturn the following day. And it can really take us to that height, that peak, and we're feeling great. And then it bombs like, ugh, right? So it's really important as we move through the next few days to stay tethered to reality and to notice that society puts unrealistic expectations of love in our mind, period. That's what happens. When we watch those movies, when we watch those TV shows, that shit isn't real. It's movies, it's TV shows, it's fake, it's fantasy, right? But our minds don't know that. We're watching a movie and that's love, that becomes love to us, right? And each of us has a different experience with this. And a lot of people have already moved through this, but if it's not something you move through, then, or I believe that even when we move through stuff, it's a spiral. We get to come back and we get to go deeper. And so this is an invitation to go deeper around what love is to you, what connection is to you, what relation is to you. And so anyway, the reason that I brought up Willow with Damned Muddle is I'm actually going to share the screen to the Dan Muddle homepage. And so Willow has this page, it's damnedmuddle.com. And it's where, you know, if you don't follow Willow or don't know Willow, there's a ton of information you can find about them here, but also it's a space for people to just muddle through things, right? Like there's a lot of stuff to figure out in life. And the reason that I'm bringing you here is because this week, Willow posted, so this is a community space, there's a forum. So when you come to the homepage, this is the homepage, and any of these pictures that you tap on are going to take you to Willow's Instagram page. But as we go over here, there's a forum, there's blogs, so you can read Willow's blogs here and comment. You can also go to the forum, which is where I'm going to take us. And you can see all of these different places, right? So there's a neurodivergent chat forum, there's a chronic illness chat forum, community care, queer, special interests, make it better, general. So there's all kinds of different forums that you can go into for connection and for growth and all of that stuff. And then when we go to the blog, okay, so this is really, really the reason that I'm here. Okay, so 2 days ago, Willow posted this. It's my type of Valentine. And you know, she talks about all of not all of, but a lot of the stuff that is coming up for her in that moment. And I love it because it invites you to really scale back. And this is the process of the energy this week that I'm inviting people to utilize. Tap into what love is for you. What is intimacy for you? What is Valentine's Day for you? What does it represent? How do you feel about it? What's moving through you? Where does it come from? What's the programming? Really taking time. And you don't have to do, if you're not somebody who thinks through things, you can feel through it. If you're not somebody who feels through it, you can think through it, you can write about it, you can talk about it, you can consider it. There's all kinds of different ways organic to you to navigate what comes up for you, right? When you see something online today, a love bombing post, right, from someone that you follow online, what comes up for you? Notice, just notice, right? And maybe nothing, and great, you know, but maybe something. And so we just honor that. So anyway, if you want a space to talk to other, you know, mostly other neurodivergent, there's a lot of neurodivergent, queer people, disabled people that are here on danmuddle.com, you know, having conversations. If you're looking for another community, another space to kind of move through that, highly recommend Willow Space, danmuddle.com. So, okay, that's that. No, I'm not in paid partnership. I just really appreciate a good community space. Thank you, Megan. So Megan said the Venus workshop that I had done last year felt very relevant this week. So anybody that's here should have access to that Venus workshop. I'm going to redo it for the upcoming Venus retrograde in the summer, and I'd love to do it live. But if you don't have access and you're interested in a Venus workshop, we can absolutely, I can get you that information. So good, Megan. I'm glad that it was helpful. I love that workshop. I love, Venus, but I love that workshop. Okay. All right. So that's that on that. I'm going to pause, take a drink, shift into the next part of what I'm doing, which is going to be pulling up the chart and going through the day by day. So again, any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to unmute or drop into the chat or hang for a moment and I will share this. All right. So yay me, I finally figured out how to get an Aries rising chart. So that might not have been a big deal for anyone else, but I am very happy about it. So we have Aries rising, so don't worry about the houses. This is just going to overlay to your chart. But what we're going to be considering today, again, it's Valentine's Day. The moon is in Sag. We already talked about that. We have the trine this morning. So let me get my draw stamp out. Okay, so we have the moon here in Sag, and it is just coming into this trine to Jupiter at 8 degrees of Aries. And so this is exciting. It's quick. The moon is moving pretty quickly, but it's exciting. It helps us kind of get a boost into the day. But and it can help kind of smooth, again, the moon moving into Sagittarius and out of Scorpio allows us to breathe a little bit easier. It frees our emotions a bit. Whereas we could have had the ability with the Scorpio moon and all the Pluto stuff to get stuck in it, whatever it is. But the trines to the Aries planets can also be unhinged. So this morning there can also be a feeling of unhinged emotion, right? Because it's fire, it's a trine, so it's quick energy. Jupiter in Aries is excited, but it also has no real like slowdown. So it can just be unhinged emotions as well this morning. So the excitement may turn a little chaotic, which is okay. We just got to be aware of it. So that's happening today. We also have an aspect called a half square. A square is a 90-degree angle. A half square is a 45-degree angle, and it's happening between Pluto and Mars. So this isn't necessarily something that I would normally discuss, but because we've talked about Mars and Pluto already, it's important to have that conversation here, that they are also in a half square, which is uncomfortable. So Mars, our action, Pluto, our underworld, coming into a conversation. This can be powerful struggles on a collective level, right? So we're going to continue to see things coming out in a collective atmosphere with this energy. A half square isn't necessarily, a square is on the surface. You're going to see the power struggles. A half square is bubbling under the surface. And what I think about when I'm thinking about this kind of like bubbling is all of these little things that are coming out, right? We have these little things that aren't so little, right? But we have, like, for instance, I'm specifically thinking about the train derailments that have been happening throughout the United States. And the media is really not covering much about it at all. So that to me is a collective Mars half square to Pluto bubbling in the undersurface. There's stuff that's happening that the collective isn't aware of, right? This is the bubbling. Okay. So this can also happen in our own experience. There might be something bubbling underneath the surface. And so we can recognize what maybe is bubbling, tapping into what may be coming forward so that we can get an idea of it, take a look at it, recognize that it's there before it is at the surface and it's taking us by deeper surprise. So recognizing today what may be bubbling, right, in your own experience. And then also being aware that Pluto is always going to be happening on a collective level. So that's today, the 14th. When we get into the 15th, really starts to get a little bit more interesting with the aspects, because we have two conjunctions 2 days in a row, and they're very, very different. And they're not having a conversation in the sky, right? So first we have, and this is tomorrow on Wednesday, the 15th, we have this beautiful aspect of Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces. It's stunning for Pisces energy. It is not stunning for anything tangible in reality. Like, nope, not the time tomorrow. If you have to, ground. If you have to do very reality-based things tomorrow, make sure that you're grounding yourself, you're taking care of your mental health, and you're breathing. Big deal for tomorrow if you have to do reality things. If you don't, lean into the woo, lean into the spiritual, lean into the self-love that is available around this time as well, right? When we think about love, often we're thinking about romance with other people. And that's great. That's important. I think relation to other people is super, super important. But if that's not available, then it's also super, super great to tap into our own love and our own fantasies and realities of love. Because with Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces, there is a craving for the fantasy of love. It is the most romantic. It's happening in the last decan of Pisces, which is the horniest decan of Pisces, like the most romantic, wanting to be passionate, wanting to be in it, right? So this energy that comes up tomorrow, and we're feeling it today, and it's being influenced by Valentine's Day, not influenced. They're a reaction, right? They're a mirror. But all of this for our experience is amping up that craving for love, to be loved, but it also really brings to the surface the reality of loneliness, the reality of anxiety, or feeling lost, feeling untethered. Pisces has no boundaries. It's not bounded into reality. So when we have Venus, an internal planet, with Neptune, the co-ruler of Pisces, it can really leave us untethered and feeling lost. And often with this energy, it's going to be due to unrealistic ideals and boundaries that haven't been laid or expressed or taken seriously, right? When we think about Neptune, it's always a good idea to recognize where our boundaries are. A lot of time boundaries get put on Saturn, and that is true, but Neptune knows no bounds. So it's going to show us where we don't have boundaries, right? And so this energy can be difficult to handle. And so if we can recognize that this is a good opportunity to see where we can use boundaries as a form of self-love, where we can restructure our ideals and our fantasies around love and relation and what that looks like, where we can honor our loneliness, where we can honor our feeling of being lost and ground ourselves in the moment. Those things are going to be important. This could be really easy to become untethered from reality. I need to say that again. Like, this could be really easy. So if you are one that often disassociates unwillingly and doesn't want to, it's important to put boundaries around that tomorrow. If you're someone who is super creative and loves to dip into the spiritual woo-woo stuff, tomorrow's a great day to do it. Perfect day to do it. This is good inner child work. This is good spirituality, good creativity. It's dreamy, it's romantic, it's sleepy, it's magical, but it can be misleading. Neptune causes a fog, and when it's sitting with Venus, it's going to cloud our judgment around relationships, finances, our values, our self-worth, our relation, Venus things. So it can be misleading, and it can lead us to lean into what we wish were reality, what we wish were true. So as this energy is happening, we're feeling it today, we're going to feel it tomorrow, we'll feel it a little bit on the following day. It's important just to stay a little bit tethered to reality where needed. Notice that energy is trying to swoop you away. The energy tomorrow wants to swoon you. It wants to sweep you off your feet. And that's great. But it can also take us into unrealistic places. It can take us into scary and lonely places. And so just noticing how you work with this energy and how you want to lean into it, and what boundaries or support you need to put up in place in order to navigate it. This is a great time to cultivate any kind of spiritual practice for self-acceptance and for self-love. It's a beautiful energy. But the reason that I continue to say that it's important to feel tethered is because the following day, we get slammed with another conjunction that's very different. We have the sun coming into a conversation with Saturn in Aquarius. This is dry, this is cold, this is depressing, right? This is Thursday, the 16th. The sun moving into a conversation with Saturn. The sun is our life force. The sun in Aquarius is already in its exile. It's in its detriment. It's the farthest place from its home. It's not very well resourced there. And the reason is the sun likes to be the center stage, right? The sun is Leo. It wants to express in its way. It is the center of the universe. That's what we love about Leo. It allows us to step into our power and our truth, our authentic personal truth. But Aquarius is much more collective. And so when the sun is in Aquarius, it doesn't feel seen in the same way. It feels very exiled, right? It's the furthest place from its home energy. And it's coming into a conversation with Saturn, which is the ruler of Aquarius, which is cold and distant and doesn't give a shit about your personal experience. Right? And so the sun, as our life force energy, coming into a conversation with Saturn, which is limitations, Saturn depresses the energy. So this is literally a depression of our life force energy. I'm saying that to say, if you deal with depression, Thursday could be a heavy day. We're coming off of that very high day the past couple days, and then we come into this reality of Sun and Saturn. This can also be really great to get things done, to organize, to make something happen, to take tangible steps in a reality-based space, right? Which is amazing, and we love it. And if we allowed ourselves to get too untethered and we went out all the way and we lost our sense of reality, we went to the fantasy the last day, right? And we weren't even aware that it was a fantasy. Then on Thursday, reality may come and say, no, that was a fantasy. And that jolt of our nervous system, of our mental health can be really, really difficult. So again, borders, boundaries, support around that, or just being aware. So when you wake up on Thursday morning, you can hug yourself and you can say, it's going to be a tough day, but we do tough things every single day. And I can do it, right? Whatever that looks like for you. But just knowing, right? Astrology for awareness. So we have the high on Wednesday, then we have the heavy on the 16th. The other thing that makes it heavy on the 16th is the moon has moved into Capricorn, which is another Saturn ruled sign. So Saturn is very present. So Saturn things, leaning into Saturn things can be good. And what Saturn wants us to do is take responsibility. It wants us to deal with things when they come up. So on Thursday, don't try not to avoid what is coming up to be dealt with. Take a tangible step, ask for help, do whatever you feel like you need to do on that day, but try not to avoid. Saturn doesn't like for us to avoid. It likes to do something with the energy that it's given to us, right? This is a time to deal with reality in some way. And it can be separate from the dream and illusion, but it's time to separate the dream from the illusion, right? Like the illusion isn't something that is tangible. It's not something that we can grasp, right? The dream has tangible steps that we can take from. And Saturn wants to take those tangible steps out of the dream, right? Neptune in Pisces, Venus in Pisces, this is very dreamy. It's allowing us to dream of what we want. Now Saturn's here to say, okay, what's the tangible steps I can make to get to that dream, right? And Saturn soon will move into Pisces. And so this up and down of this big Pisces energy and then big Saturn energy is showing us where those things aren't connected. So when Saturn moves into Pisces in March and it stays there for 3 years, it's going to work to bring those two things together, the dream and the reality. And that's this week, what we're feeling in that up and down. It can be about all kinds of different things, but the general energy is going to be the same, right? So this can also be a day where we realize, Rick Levine, an astrologer and mentor that I work with, often speaks to Neptune and Neptune transits coming into Saturn transits as if you've ever seen something underwater, right? And it's stunning, it's beautiful. If you've seen seashells underwater, coral underwater, fish underwater, stunning, beautiful. And as soon as you bring it up onto land, it looks more dull. It's not as colorful. It's not as beautiful. And this can happen this week, right? This Neptune and Venus is beautiful. The dream is wonderful. Everything is great. And then it's like, shit, the dream's not that good on Thursday. Like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, right? And so there can be that kind of like disappointment, frustration, or just a realization, right? That something isn't exactly what I thought it was. This can be relationships. This can be, all kinds of different things. So all depending on where it's hitting in your chart specifically. The other thing that I want to talk about with this Saturn energy is that this is the last Sun-Saturn conjunction in a Saturn sign for 25 years. But the Sun-Saturn conjunctions have been happening in Saturn signs since 2018. So if you aren't into astrology and tracking the astrology back to that date, it's not a big deal. But I did want to notice that for anyone that is into looking back and kind of tracking the energy that way. This will be the last Sun-Saturn conjunction in a Saturn sign for 25 years, which for me, as I'm like breathing a sigh of relief for the collective, because that's difficult, right? So Sun-Saturn, we just talked about it. It depresses the energy. And when it's in a Saturn sign, it's doing that even more. So when that starts happening in Pisces and Aries and Taurus and other signs, it's going to lighten that a little bit and allow us to have a little bit more joy and support in those spaces. So that will be a shift that's happening here as well. And we're thinking a lot about what Saturn is doing during this time. Between now and March, when Saturn moves into Pisces, it's a good time to think about what Saturn has been doing for the past 2.5, 3 years since it moved into your Aquarius house in March of 2020. Saturn moved into Aquarius in March of 2020. It moves out in March of 2023, next month. And so just thinking about what Saturn has been doing for the last 3 years in that part of your chart, right? Your Aquarius house. And what lessons are we taking with us as we move into Saturn and Pisces? What things has Saturn been teaching? Saturn is the teacher, right? It teaches us lessons and it gives us gifts, etc., based on the lessons that we're learning with it. So what is the gift? What is the lesson that you're taking from this Saturn transit, March 2020 until March 2023 in your Aquarius house? Just considering what that may be. We can always talk about it if anybody has stuff that comes up with that. I did have someone ask me, and I will talk a little bit about it. I took some notes about what Saturn has been doing for me, just because a couple people have asked that I do that more often so that you can kind of have an idea of what that looks like. So as we finish the 3-year transit, so you're going to find the Aquarius house of your natal chart, and you're going to think about the themes of that house, and you're going to think about Saturn and Saturn's themes, right? What lessons is Saturn teaching you around the themes of that house? Any planets that are there, aspects that are there, you can tack on and layer from there. But for me, Aquarius is my second house. So the second house is a lot about values. It's about self-value. It's about our money, our assets, our resources. It's about self-worth and I have Mercury in the second house, which then ties in a lot of mental stuff. It also ties in technology, which ties into this transit for me. And it also aspects Pluto, my MC, Jupiter, and Mars, which are all in fixed placements. And so during this 3 years for me, I moved my business, which my business is my resource. It's how I make my money, second house. So I moved my business into a fully virtual space, right, to thrive. COVID allowed me to really break down my own self-worth and how to best use my gifts as a resource, second house. And I reevaluated my relationship to safety and security and material assets. During this time, my husband and I sold all of our stuff, sold our house, bought an RV, started this new experience so we can do more communal living. We can live on the land in a healthier and more sustainable way. We can utilize our resources in a better way for ourselves, but also for the collective. This is all resource stuff, second house. And so Saturn, it wasn't easy, right? Saturn doesn't just say like, oh, here are the lessons, right? Like it came because I couldn't afford to continue to live in a house, right? I couldn't, second house, our resources changed. I didn't have the same resources to put into the life that I was living. And so I totally had to shift. For me, having a nice house, like I grew up in a house that's cozy. And so for me, safety and security was very material. And I really had to shift that. And while Saturn moved through my second house, it forced me to re-understand what safety and security is for me, what that means, and my self-worth along with that second house, right? So it can show up in a lot of ways, but that's just, one of the ways that Saturn has been working with me for the last 3 years. And the lessons that I learned and am taking with me from Saturn in my second house is that my material worth, like what I have financially and material, isn't the same as what I have internally, spiritually, emotionally, right? Those are different things. The safety that I can find within me, within myself, is very different than the safety now that I look for externally. And those are things that I've learned with Saturn moving through. Now, Saturn is my chart ruler. Saturn is very important in my chart. So Saturn often teaches me a lot of things and we work well together. That's not always going to be people's experience. So if you don't feel like you've gotten anything out of this transit, that's absolutely okay. It could be stuff that's happening on the background, right? So, it can show up a lot of different ways, especially if you're having Saturn through like the third house, sixth house, ninth house, 12th house. Those like eighth house, these dark houses are a little harder to pinpoint what the lessons are, right? And it's okay. Sometimes you're not ever going to know the lesson. And sometimes you won't know the lesson until Saturn moves out and is in Pisces for a year. And then you look back and you're like, oh shit, that's what that was, right? So take all that for what you will. But that is my Saturn through Aquarius story. So I would love to hear yours. If anybody wants to share in the comments, in the chat, off mic, feel free to do so now, later, whenever feels relevant. We will be talking about this plenty more times as Saturn is finishing up over the next month and again moves into Pisces in March, which I am really, really interested to see how those shifts play out in March. So, okay. What was I talking about? Oh, the 16th. Oh, I got to go back to this page. That's not what I needed. All right. Let me see here. I'm going to pause for a quick sec. Okay. So I think that's all that I have to say about that big up and down. But that's the major energy that's coming, midweek that we just want to be aware of. And then we can move to the 17th. And the 17th is a cute day. I don't mind the 17th. I like it for a follow-up to the previous 2 days, that up and down. This is a level set day. We have the moon in Cap still. And later in the day, it's going to conjunct Pluto, which can get a little bit heavy for our emotions. But what I'm looking forward to on this day, this is Friday, this is Venus's day. Venus is still coming off of that Neptune. It's still close enough. It's in Pisces. We can still be spiritual and woo and all that stuff, creative and compassionate, etc. But we also have Mercury in a conversation with Jupiter. So Mercury is coming into the 9th degree of Aquarius. and it's coming into a sextile, which is a harmonious or flowing conversation with Jupiter at 9 degrees of Aries. And this is expansive. This allows us to link up our minds, our brain with Jupiter, the bigger picture, right? So we can piece some things together. The details in the bigger picture come together. This is expansive. This allows us to process some of the stuff that's happened over the last couple days. And it allows us to have some brave conversations, right? Jupiter in Aries is brave, it's courageous, and it wants to do the thing, whatever the thing is. And when it's in this flowing conversation with Neptune, it allows us to have the conversations, whatever that is. If it's a conversation with ourselves where we need to be really truthful and honest, if it's a conversation with someone else where we really need to be truthful and honest. And it also allows us to listen really well to someone else that may be trying to be truthful and honest and brave, right? So this is a really good day to process what came up the last few days. So if you get really triggered on Wednesday or Thursday, keep in mind that this transit's coming on Friday. And this might be the day where you do the intellectual stuff, right? If the intellectual stuff is too much the previous days, this may be the day where, okay, now I can process some of what was coming up. So try not to put too much pressure on yourself to do the things when you're in the up and down roller coaster midweek. As we get into this transit, it allows us to kind of find some space to put some things together that we've been moving through and processing through. So I invite you to lean into this energy. The one way that it can show up really in shadow for the collective is bold and boisterous talking, like overconfident, overbold, like Trump might make a speech or some shit, right? Like it's that kind of bold and awful, just like the audacity, right? Can definitely be available with this transit as well. So just keeping that in mind. So again, that's Friday the 17th. The other minor aspects that we have happening on this day is Neptune and Mercury in a half square. So the processing may be, again, we have a lot of Aquarius energy still, Mercury in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aries. Neither of these necessarily super compassionate. So there may be difficulty finding compassion in the processing, in the conversation. But remember, Venus and Neptune are still super close. So if you're feeling not like you can find any compassion, take a moment, tap into your Venus, ask for some support from Venus and Neptune to bring some compassion to you or to whomever you're meeting up with, etc. The energy is there. We just have to search for it and we have to look for it and lean into it. So, okay. So then we get into the weekend. We get into the 18th. And on this day, the moon has now moved into Aquarius, and there are 4 planets in Aquarius through the beginning part of the day before the sun dips into Pisces, and it's Pisces season. Hey, it's my season. So happy season to any Pisces sun people out there. I might be the only one in here, I'm not sure. But anyway, we have 4 planets in Aquarius at the beginning of the day. The moon has moved in, Mercury's there, the sun is still there at 29 degrees, sitting still very close to Saturn. So with this morning, there can be a little bit of heaviness here, but then it dips into Jupiter's hot tub and the boundaries of its depression, its exile float away. That's what I envision when I think of Pisces later in the 18th, literally like falling into Pisces, like the sun literally falling into Pisces. Like it does not like to be in Aquarius. It doesn't. And so it like falls into this big ocean hot tub of Jupiter's and Pisces, and it breathes a breath of like Saturn's off my back, right? And we all know how that feels when you have some authority figure just fucking right, and then you get to like go around the corner and breathe. Like that's what the sun's going to do later on the 18th when it moves into Pisces, and I'm super excited for it because I'm a Pisces kid, so I like that energy. But not everybody's going to. If you're an Aquarius kid, you might not feel as comfortable with the Pisces energy, and that's fair, right? So it's all about where you are in your process and what your chart looks like, and noticing how these things affect you. So on the 18th, we have a pile up in Aquarius in the morning, and then the sun moves into Pisces, and it builds for that new moon that's happening. So we really start to lean into and feel this Pisces energy, this slipping away of the boundaries, this tone shift into feelings and compassion and emotions. And the invitation is to tap into them, to allow the emotions to come, right? We've gone through, one of the things that a lot of astrologers talk about is the, Capricorn, like we start the year with 2 Saturn ruled signs, right? The 2023, the year, right? If we start the year on January 1st, 2023, it's Capricorn season, then it's Aquarius season, both ruled by Saturn, right? So it's let's get shit done time, right? Like in the astrology speak. Then we get to Pisces season, and it is not that. It is feel your emotions, flow, do the thing, be spiritual, be creative, whatever that looks like for you. Allow yourself to just be, love everybody, love yourself, right? And that's a very different vibe. So there's a tone shift that happens over the weekend when Pisces kind of gets lit up, right? Because then we're going to have a little 4-planet stellium for Pisces that happens during the new moon. So moving on to the 19th. The 19th is the sun's day, and this is the first sun's day with the sun in Pisces. And again, building us to the new moon. But first, we have to recognize this potentially difficult or heavy aspect between Venus at 29 degrees of Pisces and Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. This sextile means that the energies are flowing together, but Pluto is intense. It's the underworld. It's always going to be a little bit tense, a little bit heavy, dealing with some real life things. And Venus is here. So it's our relation, it's our finances, it's, Venus things, beauty, harmony, justice, etc. And at the 29 degree mark, it's a heavy degree. It's the anaretic degree. It's a crisis degree. Things can come up here that are really jolting. Pluto is the collective. So we may see it in the collective, but also for us in our own personal lives, we may find an ability to tap into the underworld, into our shadows, do some shadow work here. And it may feel enjoyable. A sextile is flowing energy. This allows us to dive into some of that shadow work with Venus and Pluto, and it feels good, actually, right? Where before it might have really been rough, right? And so this could be an invitation, right, to go back to that Venus conversation that Megan brought up earlier about that, excuse me, that Venus workshop that I have. This could be another good time to dip into that same energy, those same feelings in a way that now is a little bit more supportive than maybe it once was. So that is available at the beginning of the day, or not even that is more available, just relate and understand it in a new way as well with that Venus Pluto. At the 29th degree, which is the last degree, which means it's about to be over that cycle, that part of the cycle, right? Like each house has 30 degrees, each zodiac has 30 degrees. So the 29th degree is such an important degree because it's the wrap up. It's time where we take all the stuff that we've learned through the beginning, and then, we have all this information and we want to do something with it, right? Before that cycle ends. So that's what the intensity is of the 29th degree. Then we get into the Pisces new moon, and this is going to depend on where you are in the world. It's at 11:05 p.m. on the 19th Pacific Standard Time. It's on the 20th at 2:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's going to depend on where you are, but it's 1 degree and 22 minutes of Pisces. Let me pull up the chart. Sorry. Get all my stuff out of the way. Okay. All right. So here is the chart for the Pisces new moon. And again, 1 degree, 22 minutes of Pisces, and it's not being aspected. So it's not having a direct conversation with any other planet. It's just the 1 degree Pisces moon. It is still in a conjunction with Saturn. Saturn is there, but it's out of sign, which is kind of like, yeah, buddy, I know you're there, but fuck off. Like it's there, right? Like the Saturn's there, the responsibilities, the limitations, the frustrations, they're there. And Pisces may allow us to not really pay attention to that because we want to dip into what we want to feel, right? And that's okay with this new moon in Pisces. There's 4 planets here in Pisces: the moon, the sun, Neptune, and Venus, all still here. Venus will leave Pisces less than an hour after this full moon hits. It'll dip into Aries. And I love that switch because it allows us to capture the dream. Venus is still there in Pisces for the moon. It captures the dream, right? It allows us to plant that seed with Venus there to nurture it. And then Venus takes the seed into Aries. Aries is the first sign, it's the leadership sign. It's what takes us into the next cycle. And so with Venus taking that seed into Aries, then we'll have both benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter, in Aries, the sign of let's do it, let's go, let's start. And they have this new seed that we've planted around the new moon, right? And so I love that switch. I love having both Venus and Jupiter in Aries coming up for the next month. There's a lot of potential to launch things, to do things, to take the next step in something, to be brave, to be courageous, to stand up for what's right, to fight for your truth, to fight for the rights of other people. There's a lot of energy coming up for that. So just being aware of it. But I love that dip I love Venus and Pisces. I have it natally in my chart, but I love this lunation with Venus right there at the anaretic degree, and then less than an hour later dipping into Aries and really starting off this new something, right? So I love that whole kind of energy of the new moon. We're going to go deeper into the new moon. Hopefully I can get the monthly moon gathering scheduled. If not, I'll do a specific breakdown of this moon, but that's the general energy. I mean, we're still feeling all the stuff, right? We're still feeling Venus and Pluto. We're still feeling Venus and Neptune. We're still feeling Chiron and, we haven't even talked about that yet because that comes the following week, but there's other stuff that we're feeling, right? But the gist of this lunation is that Pisces gold and Venus's capture and then dip out into the next kind of cycle. And I love it. This is the last Pisces lunation without Saturn in Pisces for the next 3 years. So again, a really good energy to work with pure Pisces energy before Saturn moves into Pisces. And then it'll stay there for 3 years. So just wanted to note that. We're already feeling its presence because it's a 3-degree orb. It's at 28 degrees of Aquarius. The moon's at 1 degree of Pisces. So we're already feeling Saturn, but it's not in there yet. Okay. So that is, my friends, the next week. Monday, Moon Day, the 20th, is the day of that we'll be really feeling that new moon energy. Sunday and Monday, both good days to work with the moon. It's Pisces, so it's a great day to be spiritual, tap into other worlds, do any of that creation, that creativity. But it's Pisces, so it's also great to nap. Like a lot of ways that we could use this energy. So just keeping that in mind. One thing that I didn't note here that I will is we are coming into a Mercury sextile to Chiron. This again is another opportunity for us to talk about our wounds, to talk about any kind of healing work and stuff that we have that we're moving through. But I believe that is the week ahead astrology, my friends. So for those of you that are here live, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything that came up you want me to go back over, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to chill here for a moment and then we will pull a card for the week. So I'm going to mute, take a drink, leave some space, and then we'll get into the tarot card. Okay. Using Black Thumb Tarot today. And I love this deck. All right, so I got a couple people that said they really liked the way that I did the tarot last week. So we're going to do it the same way today. I'm going to leave you with the picture, and then later today, I'm going to later someday. I don't know what today looks like for me exactly. Hopefully today, I'll at least get you all a little write-up of what the card like means or what comes up for me, etc. But as always, I invite you to take as much time and space as you need to process and prepare yourself to receive any messages if you like to play this game. And if you don't, then that's absolutely fine. I will bring up the card. The message that comes to you intuitively is always, in my opinion, more important than anything that comes up for me. So just noticing what comes up for you, emotions, feelings, thoughts, memories, programming, anything that comes forward, resistance, resonance. It's important just to notice here. So this is a card for the week ahead. It's going to be specifically a card for my patrons, multiple people watching. So card that can bring intuitive guidance to each of them in their journey for this week coming February 14th through the 20th, 2023. This is the Four of Pentacles card for anyone that can't see it. Again, just noticing anything that comes up to you organically about this card. Okay. And that is what I will leave you with today, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. As always, feel free to chime into the comments, share as much or as little as feels accessible and organic for you. I appreciate you, and we'll chat soon.